but that comes to Tirana very soon. I do all kinds of shit, so my lecture changes like quite radically. So this is a car that we did together with a fashion design couple who are called Bless, and they asked me for a sauna. I happen to have made other saunas. I'm not going to show them. I make a lot of saunas, and they asked me to put it in front of a Dangram, which is basically an artwork that looks like what I do, but better. So I can't do what I do. And then there was like a kind of really well-resolved, kind of hippie, very cozy garden. Not what I do, but very well done. And I was like, what is the aesthetic in between that? And I came to the conclusion that it is like Helmut Kohl's golden S-Class. And then we put a sauna oven inside, and we turned the entire thing into a sauna. That's my sauna car. It's very beautiful. I drive it every day. I drove it to the airport this morning. Like, it is my car. I don't drive it with the heat on, in principle. It's very comfy even without the heat. And so I did it with these fashion people, so then they make a blanket out of it. It's funny, they even have dresses, like dresses with the inside of my car. My kids have little t-shirts with the inside of the car, and they're like, Papa's car. And it really turns Germans on, because it gets at this like particular thing where it's like the technical aspect. You know, they're very attracted to technical things, and they're also attracted to like homeopathic sauna. So it's like right in this kind of emotional sweet spot that they have, that it hits both notes. And this starts like a general interest in cars. I don't need to own cars. I don't, except driving my kids around. But I think about public space, and back to that sauna, and this thing is about, again, like a private thing that becomes a public thing, becomes a gathering place. I mean, it's kind of a simple enough thing, but a la the kitchen, this is like a table mounted on a Jaguar where you have drinks in public on your car, so your car becomes an exterior, a public place. And that, you can mount an umbrella, you can have another series of chairs and other tables. You can mount a table on a motorcycle that then again becomes like a place for interaction. And I care about places for interaction. So this is another project that starts construction this year. All of it starts such a good year for me, hopefully. It's all going to start in the ground. This building permit is in. All the building permits are in. And this is a little house. I mean, tiny, tiny. It's so much smaller than it looks because it's only 200 square meters, the whole thing. But it's still 6 bedrooms in what I call the motel, living, dining, kitchen here, and a staircase in between. And to go back, and I think this is going to connect to Tirana projects in a second, you read that it's a staircase, you read that it's kind of a motel, right? It's like a weekend beach house. And you read that it's like a floating piece of land. And it's in a flood zone. It's in a place where it's going to flood totally. The water is going to become super high in that place time by time. So it's called the Anthropocene because kind of we've destroyed the world. But it's also inside New York City. Like it's in a strange corner of New York City called the Rockaways, if you know this place, that is kind of a mess. And again, the model photos, but it's a beach house where you again read the functions. And now we can get into Tirana for a second. As I said, thanks for having me. I really, really like being here, and I'm happy to have an excuse to be here now. And we have things to talk about. Wow, is it more square meters than all the other things put together? So it's quite something to talk about a car interior and to switch gears to talk about these projects, which are enormous. That's just all the 4 projects that we're working on, like jammed together at the same scale. Oh boy, it's fun. So I want to start with my dear client who's in this room, AL Point, and they opened their office called Ava. Very cool guys. One guy, I really get along with them. Really get along with my clients, but of course I had no idea what, I think everybody has this experience, like somehow Eddie sends a WhatsApp message. Next thing you know, you're in Tirana. Next thing you know, there's like a couple guys being like, we would like you to build a 40-story building here. And it's like, have you ever made a 40-story building? No, have you? No, okay. So what's in the 40-story building? You know, it's really basic things. And it's not that I don't know what I'm doing, and it's not that they don't know what they're doing, except that we didn't do it before, and Tirana didn't do it before. There aren't one does not make 40-story buildings casually, period. End of discussion about that. And so this is where we're at. And I really, really love this project. It's called Sun, Moon, Star. That's our name. You probably know where this is from this view. It's like looking north from the square, right? And I had to be rendering to get that to work. I switched to model photo in a second, but it's somehow you read the location from that. And I didn't know what, I'm going to explain it in a second. Somehow the assignment in the first phone call that we had, I was in an airport. Sander, who's in this room, was sort of like, okay, it's this and this and this, and then in a very special way is also like, but you can do whatever you want. And it's like, well, first of all, I don't want 7 floors of office and not 9. I mean, I can do whatever I want, has no meaning to me. So but nonetheless, I was like, well, what do you want? Like, what do we think the market is? What do you imagine? And I think that we share a certainty and an uncertainty, apropos the title of this. It's like, okay, this building works. It's like civically to go back, like you can understand it in that line, right? I can understand like the logic of that place. I can understand, and I can also understand the, like, before this photo, and this photo without that building was like given to us, right? And basically it was like, well, let's have some office, we've got to have some hotel, we've got to have a restaurant, we've got to have various kinds of housing, different sizes, variety, expensive housing, cheaper housing, all, you know, and there are other projects that change. And what we started to do was to just slowly puzzle that together. And so what we formed now over time, we're filling in a block, which is very special. We're building like a very, very thin building on a corner. And I would say that like none of us are exactly sure is like, how big should the hotel be? Like, this seems like the right size. How big should these apartments be? It seems like the right size. What other apartment conditions are there? Are there differences? Like, are there? And so it sort of reflects the mix of Tirana. And I don't mean that in some kind of like poetic way, although I think that it's hopefully true in a poetic way. It reflects to me like a mix of uncertainty and also like joyful certainty, right? Like I'm not entirely sure like whether the penthouse is better or not than this, and which view is better and why. But I am sure that there are different expressions and that you want to have choice, and that in a place where we're building God knows how many square meters and who's going to go there, I wanted to start to make a set of stories where people could make different relations to this thing and see themselves in it. And I see myself in it. And so just to clarify, this is obviously exactly the same, just to say, it's exactly the same as the kitchens, right? It's like deconstructed by program, right? Like it's just like we don't need to take like a fixed parameter and set all the things inside. Instead, we take the things that you need and we do them how they want to be. So it's logical that you have individual balconies for hotels, right? It's logical that lower down you want to be a little bit more protected. I skip over that and come back to explaining that part. It's logical that up high you want to have bigger balconies that spread out and you want to have views. It's logical that you might want to have a sign that says something that connects this place. The clock is logical in its axis of the city. So it's sort of a set of logical things that, again, individually, I think that my 5-year-old children understand, but as a kind of composition becomes something much more rich and complex. And I, with very little exception, like I didn't really make up that like those quote unquote penthouses were in fact are different floors than the floors below, right? These are like, let's call them like the main floors. And then I asked our guys, who I really again love, I said, can we try one part that's like unité habitation? And I should even bring up the section, but you have to imagine it from looking here. But basically, there's a corridor going through, and then the two floors wrap so that those floors have apartments. Enter here, and you go up and down, like Corbusier. And at first, I proposed 6 floors of that, and Sander was like, "Okay, but I don't know if we can sell that." But I think that actually it starts to make some sense. Let's skip over that. These maisonettes start to tell another story. Maybe it's a different condition. And then only later, as we start to think about like, okay, what are the differences? What are these variations? Because it's quite strict. We start to get into different situations. So this then becomes a double high space. And then only after I built the model do I realize that in the Corbusier floors, you're going to see through the building, right? Because every single other place you have bathrooms and hallway, right? So you're going to see through this floor, and you're going to see through that floor, and it's going to have natural ventilation. And I'm not saying that those are better. I'm truly not saying that those are better than the other floors. I'm only saying that this place allows for that uncertain exploration in giant concrete. And I'm also sure that it works, whether, right? And then you can, of course, everybody can understand those flats, right? Everybody can understand that sign. The sun, moon, star title relates very simply to like daily information about the weather, about the situation around you. And happy birthday, mother, which surely some of you might know, is like the second thing that was said from space. You know, which may be a conspiracy. Maybe they never went to space, but it was Buzz Aldrin's birthday, so he said on the first phone call or phone, whatever it is, the first radio transmission from the moon is happy birthday, mother. But it's a sign that moves. And so I think that this expression is half clear and half uncertain. And I hope that there's some elegance in that combination and that tension between the clarity and the uncertainty in this particular project. I'm really excited about it because the structure, which I skipped over very quickly, you know, is crystal clear. It's a core in the middle, 4 columns, shear walls, you know, and the apartment organizations have to do with sizes and are my endless notes, and I have 10,000 sheets like that. And it's going to be nice at night, and it's going to be nice that it has, I think that it's nice that it has difference. And I think that that's how Tirana feels to me. Tirana doesn't feel like a mess. Tirana feels like orderly and quite free, right? And so orderly and quite free would be my ideal for my own life. Not talking about design, like living orderly and quite free, right? Because you can't make big towers without a little order in your life. And you can't do anything fun if you're not free. And then there's another project that we're working on with the same guys. And here this guy who's not here, he said he would come, but he didn't come, Piero, who I like a lot also. Different, very, very different character. He said, you know, I just want regular flats. He's like, I want regular flats. It's like not that special. Don't make it special, Sam. And I really was like, okay. Fine. And so we just make it not special. But it is, of course, very special. As you all know here, like square meters are the square meters, right? You got to do what you got to do. And we've came up with a very, very universal building. And it's just 300 meters down the road from the other one. The model is also very nice. And then you probably know this better than me because you live here. You know, we don't have to deal with sun shading to quite such an extent. And Eddie, or the prime minister, was like, I don't believe that we can maintain that sun shading. And I was like, we're going to make it out of aluminum. So I'm working on that. That's the problem with all of this, is like, how do you kind of deal with, but somehow the idiosyncrasies of the other tower make the sun shading totally possible, right? Like, you can imagine how sun shading might come down here. You can imagine changing this facade. But this one is just glass with sun shading. But then you get, and they're tiny flats or big flats, right? So you can have those are the big ones, or you can divide it into small ones. It's a very, very logical scheme. One staircase, okay, the elevators are not the right size, we changed it, and so forth. But it's in theory very easy to build. It's exactly half the size of the previous one. And I'm also attracted to it so deeply. There's not that much to say about it. I think that it's so kind of clear what it is that we're trying to do, right? And so every room has a balcony, every room has a sunshade, every one of those sunshades is adjustable, and you can cut the floors however you want in every floor. Here we get more complicated. This is our first public building. We won this competition, Adelina, when was that? September. This was a more complicated ask. I mean, apropos Tirana being uncertain, you know, it was only like after we won this that I really see that I was then in the building that we're now meant to be wrapping. But essentially, as you may know, the green thing exists. I should have put a photo of it, but it's a building that's under construction, brand new. It's maybe finished now. It's finished now, brand new building under construction, and we were asked to, you know, more than double the program. So what we did was we took the existing building and wrapped it in the program that was asked for, very simply, and made a building that is appropriate on a kind of civic scale, and a public space also appropriate on a kind of bigger civic scale. And what happens then is the archive, the cadaster archive, is inside the darkness, inside the old building, and then you get all the new offices along the other facades. I said it's more complicated, but it's actually not more complicated than that, right? If you think about it, you have the existing building, you can put storage and services inside, you can put archive in another place, so you end up with a very dark space in the middle, but then you have a clear office organization on the outside, and you have a public space on the top, which is either public to the cadaster office, which is now hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. I've been there. Even in the building that's there now, it's like people are shoulder to shoulder, 10 times more crowded than this room by a lot. I'm really as excited about this one as anyone. And we will also, you know, apropos all the design work, apropos the vacuum cleaner, apropos Florence Knoll, I mean, we mean it. Like, we keep this building. You know, it's not a polemic, and we already won, so I don't need to convince you about it. Only to say that we can add on, we can change it, we feel that freedom, let's say, and at the same time we make it quite, let's say, logical. And then another tower, which I called Lift Tower when we won in September, which was related, but I think Circle Square Triangle is a better name, because it depends on whether you look at it in elevation or you look at it in plan, the name. And it's funny that you guys need names for buildings here, right? It really matters. Like, there's certain people, I only know the names of the architects who built the building, and other people only know the names of the projects. And then we have to like Google it, and they're like, yeah, that one, of course. So the names matter here. The name of any other project of mine has no bearing at all. So I'm changing it to Circle Square Triangle as of today. And basically, it seemed to us from a previous competition that we needed to open the ground, and it's next to the university. You guys know where these buildings are, sort of, or it doesn't matter. It's on the ring. They're all like 300 meters, 300 meters, 300 meters. So it's like, in order, a string from 12 o'clock counterclockwise to 9 o'clock on the ring, if you can imagine. It's next to a building by this guy. And so we're opening up to the university on one side and Diogo's building on the other side, and we're allowing you to pass through entirely on the bottom floors. And those 3 volumes become just like in that little house that I'm making, kitchen, dining, living. It's the same as the little house. The little house in New York, I mean, the tiny house. And it, just because, I'm gonna go back to that house, just so you grasp this plan. So, you end up with, on a regular floor, you end up with like kitchen, dining, living, sleeping across the bar. I changed the floor plan for today. I changed the floor plan and I made it better. I made it only 2 stairs. It used to be 3 stairs, and now it used to be 6 stairs, and now it's 2 stairs because I could, because I like working. And I didn't even show it to my colleagues, but I'm sure that they're going to agree. But you see this floor plan where you understand like 2 kinds of spaces, right? There's the spaces of the vertical volumes, and then there's the spaces of the bars. And there are different organizations of how you circulate through them. But in essence, those all have cross ventilation. Everywhere has cross ventilation. But in theory, the bar functions and the shapes function separately. And that happens at the ground, and then it happens all the way up in a very kind of clear way. This still has the problem with sun shading. Eddie Rama also was like, what exactly are the sun shades in this one? You know, I don't know how we're going to do with the sun shading on, you know, I mean, some architects answer this question with like a whole bunch of madness. I am inclined to be like, this is crazy enough. So how do I do it simple? I think we have to work on that. I'm open to ideas. But you see, I'm going to just now for myself, because this is the last project that I'm sharing. Just to go back, you see that project, and then you see that project, basically the same project. I mean, concept like diagrammatically, it's the same. So we're trying to like pull out functions, right? Just like in Sun, Moon, Star, we're pulling out functions vertically. In here, we're pulling out functions and trying to divide how you organize a space in terms of how you do it in plan. But you can do it in obviously every which way. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense to me. It makes me nervous, I have to say. I'll just end on this note. It makes me extremely nervous talking about this here, right? It's so different. It's so different with you guys who all look extremely serious. Like nobody's really laughing at me, which is fine. But I guess I want to. I'm open to suggestions. Like for me, I try to lay out also like the problems that I see with what we're doing, and that's maybe all I have to say. Thanks a lot. Oh man, yeah.
Questions?
Oh no. Oh really? I assumed that was like why you asked.
No,
Yeah.
it's what we were expecting, and that's why I'm thanking you. raise questions. So, when I made your introduction, I said that we have the chance of seeing different perspectives and approaches. So, what is preoccupating most of us in here is this the right model of developing the city? So, this much intensity of building, this very intense buildings, not only towers, but also other ways of constructing, but occupying much land and being so strong within an urban tissue, which is very diverse in characteristics. So, do you see it as the right way of doing that? I mean, that's not related to your projects, but knowing the context.
That's the hardest and most reasonable question you could ask. I have no fucking idea. Let me be super clear. I find the responsibility overwhelming, and more than once I lose sleep about okay, it's like very, very thin, it's very, very, who's gonna live there, who is the constituency, right? And I talk about this the whole drive from the airport with Sander, right? I'm talking about like who's gonna live there, what should we do, like what is the right way of the city. So I don't know. I think, one thing that was like just said to me in said car ride was like, Dubai invented itself economically that way, like, and it's a way to do it. It's an economic idea, and that gets like out of my responsibility. Like, I don't want to live in Dubai, so if you ask me from that point of view, then no. But I completely understand like the idea from that point of view. I understand the idea of trying something. I understand the idea of using architecture to generate something, and in that sense, I support it entirely. I think I would be okay. I can ask this question every day for for years and years to come. Like, who's gonna move here? Who's gonna live in that tower? Like, I really wish that I knew the people, right? In Berlin, when I make a building like that, I really know who they are. Like, I have an idea. I don't, sort of shamefully there, but on the other hand, like the flip side, the downside of that is in Berlin, like, they're like a bunch of like, upper middle class, pretty boring white people, who are like, half of them have money from their parents. It's not so great knowing, does that, so I can console myself, like, I really want to know here, I really want to be like, I also really want an apartment inside both of those buildings, and I want to like go back and forth every few days and like see not the building but like who these people are and like what happens. Like everybody else, I read that there are a lot of empty ones, and that's a problem. But if people move in, I'm completely fine with it. That's where like I don't know. Is that fair? Yeah, there is. I'm nervous about it, of course, and you should be too. Yeah. More questions? Easier questions? Okay. Yeah, yeah.
And I also like your thing because I feel this that you are raising questions, and I'm also raising them myself. So my question here, because you talked about community, and that was the second building that was also nominated for the Inspiral Best Buildings. Yeah? That's really good. And you talked a lot about community. And then I question myself, what kind of, I also question you, because it's also related to the first question, what kind of community do you think will be created there in that kind of tower? Is it even possible to have kind of communities, which we used to have in Iran because of the scale and everything, we grew up like that. Yeah, it was the same family. They say you need a village to raise a child. So now, what kind of people do you think there are kind of community? How would children be raised in this kind of vertical environment where there's not even you get to the lift, you avoid people in the lift. How? What is your
I mean, I don't know exactly, but 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 I am from Manhattan, right? So I am a product of a lift to get to an apartment, right? I mean, I don't have a kind of nostalgia for this idea of a village. You know, I think you can start to make that idea of a village. And I think that this building, like in both cases, have like tries, which I guess I should have spoken about, you know, tries to deal with like the open space of one. They both make plazas. They both like wrap space. So they both make outdoor, like public space. They both have like public spaces like up in the air as well. I don't know about public spaces up in the air. That's not a thing in Manhattan. That works very well. Like I never go to rooftop bars ever. So it's a fair question, but I don't think that living in density is a bad thing at all. Like I mean, in fact, I'm really in favor of density. Again, I'm from like the Upper East Side. Like every, you know, per square meter, you have decades to go to get to the density of where I'm from. So I support that. What I don't know is like how people are going to relate to each other, except to work on like what is the streetscape, what is the public place, how do like parks work, right? Like how does that happen? And actually like the public space, not like does my great design or my client's good premise, like it connects somehow to the boulevard that's a walking place that is in fact full of people like walking from there to the square. Who knows what's going to happen like north of that ring when like HDM builds another tower with a pool and da-da-da. I mean, but somehow actually I do believe in the public space of that. And the round one, of course, is not on a round plot. So the round one has, you know, leaves open the rest of the space. And I imagine that like whatever is inside spills out, meaning that there's a cafe and various other, you know, kind of functions spreading. And it's designed accordingly, I mean, as opposed to having a plinth, which it doesn't have. But that comes back to my answer to the other thing, like who are the people here? You know, I don't know. I mean, for sure, what's so nice about being here as a visitor is like we're not trying to hold on to some weird fantasy from our childhoods, right? I mean, I'm also teaching in Vienna, right? And Vienna is like just like the prettiest fucking place. Vienna is like, every time you turn a corner, it's like, oh my God, wasn't the 19th century great? Like, I miss the Habsburgs, you know what I mean? And fuck that, you know? Yeah, so, but I just want to say, like, I don't want to, and it's like, I don't think that's good either. So I don't think it's, but back to your one last thing about the landmark thing. I try to deal with I try to deal with that in both those projects, to have them be like special, unspecial, to have them, and that's true also of all like the kitchen thing too, like special, unspecial. Like it doesn't have to be the the thing. You know, I show that rendering because there is no other building in that photograph. But I understand that there will be in a long line of building, and I put the clock on the corner. And actually, Times Square is pretty great too. I mean, just to fight with you. Thanks for the thank you. I appreciate the question.
Can I ask a question? I really liked here. I really liked your approach, and but what I find really interesting, and especially in the Albanian projects, is that I find this very interesting relationship with the building itself and how Albanian your projects look like. And yeah, really.
I take that as a compliment.
Yes, exactly. And it's really interesting because I think it's one of the first times that we are seeing this project as an approach to this culture, actually sort of embracing what is here and in a way trying to understand that. And I really appreciate that. But what I find interesting is that perhaps you are, of course, as you explained, you are aware of the design process and everything that happens, and consciously you know what you're doing. But what is interesting is that here the projects that are actually, in a way, you're sort of trying to understand, perhaps unconsciously, I don't know, are actually done unconsciously. And how do you find this world of references here that are so unavoidable and so, in a way, very difficult to escape from, because you're constantly seeing, I guess, since the time you arrived from the airport and you came here, let's say, you are constantly looking at this context. How do you find that?
I think, I mean, of course I like that it's messy and unrelated to my work. It's great. You know, Berlin is gray, boring, not messy, but not clean. Just that, right? And I like working in that, like living and working in a place where there's nothing nice to look at I find very nice. You know, you have like this, you know, you have Eddie's weird like color thing from whenever that was, that you're suddenly like, wow, why is that facade painted that way? And then, you know, and indeed in this building we're going to discuss tomorrow, like where the mini splits go, which is something that you would never ever do in any other place that you know, like there's going to be like, how do we hide them or not hide them, or show them or not show them? Even things that are like quote unquote accidental, as you say, like unintentional, or like really casual, they still had rules, they still had logic. You know, there's still like a logic to like why people put things the way they put them there, and then there are exceptions to like where they broke the rule. Like, you know, you put a window and you put a mini split next to it. Like, you know, it's not such a big deal to say like, okay, that's not so bad if you put it in the same spot, or like you vary it in one axis or not another axis. I thought to myself, let's like look deeply into the typologies. That was like my first thought, because the first phone call was like, it's a retail, and then it's a couple floors of office, and then it's a hotel, and then it's a restaurant, and then it's this, and then it's this. And it was like, oh. So like, in a way, before I even had an idea about Tirana, it was like, okay, that is built in, that same, it's given to me. So I take it, right? And I only realized later that like I always take it. right? I don't, and I think you can make rules. Like within that, I think it's most elegant to make rules within and then figure out where to break them. Right? So on a really basic level, that like sun, moon, star, you know, the lines are always horizontal. So like you don't get fucked up. Right? Like I know that it sounds like a bit dry and stupid, but right? It's like it's stacked. Right? It's a tower, right? There are many, many ways you can make towers where the lines are always vertical. So there was a sketch, of course, at some point where it's like hotel on like a quarter of one side, elevators going all the way up, and then housing on 3/4 the other side. So, and then like that would be a line. But somehow, okay, that doesn't add up because you ended up with horizontal and vertical lines, and too much mess. And so somehow we agree. And we go through it. It's like, okay, what do we do to, like, what rules do we make? And then you make rules that say, like, the hotel feels like a hotel, it's horizontal, it follows the other rules. I talk about it like it's no big deal. Meanwhile, like, you have to kind of stick to it, like, pretty hard. Not that anybody's trying to fuck it up, just, you know. And actually, but my bigger concern, like, just a different answer to a different question. My bigger worry is suddenly like we try to start making it like slick looking like that Berlin building and like hiding drain pipes and yada yada yada. And it's just gonna get crappy. I don't mean that in relation to Albania, like I also mean that like I also had to fight really hard. I know that it's not Tirana and it's not the same thing. And this is for you, Sander, because I want to convince you about this tomorrow. Why did it slow down? What I was going to say is like I went out of my way to like even in Berlin to like expose the drain pipes, to like have the mess. Yeah, come to that. Yeah, right, there we go. But like, I mean, something here that like in Germany, like you can't make difference because it's so technical and boring. But actually, I had to like fight to get that drain pipe right there, right in front of the window, and not in the corner and make the corner bigger. I also had to fight, like, which you can't really see that clearly, but like that glass is darker than that glass. Because it needs to be for the rules, and it's fine. And I think that trying to be like, okay, there's practical things, like search for the practical thing that makes the story, which I think is what like vernacular architecture is. Like what I think that all architects are attracted to vernacular. Does that make sense? Yes, okay. So Tirana doesn't feel like out of place for me.
Better?
Yeah?
Okay, the first part was very interesting. The interior, you were having fun, doing your thing, making a few clients happy, because they want to have to impress their friends, whatever, buying a bed for 2, 3, 5 people, doesn't matter. In the meantime, you're a bit judgmental against the Germans and the functionality that they apply, which I'm not 100% sure of there.
Me neither.
Because I think traditionalities, or these kind of things are experiments that work. They were built, tried, and they work, and we are still applying. And then I was really shocked from the jump to the urban context that you made regarding Tirana, because you're always designing like interiors, furnitures, of course this one, but then you made a huge leap.
Absolutely.
Babel Tower, I would call it. 140, 135 meters tall tower. And then it would continue with a bit more smaller towers, but still the same idea was applied. There was no context, like literally from the models, from the different drawings, from anything.
uh, I think it's very worrying the fact that you don't know for whom you are designing, who's going to live there, why. Even you are not certain that you would live there. In the meantime, you mentioned Le Corbusier, who designed such an amazing building, and he knew exactly who was designing for. It was for a social project. And here, it's kind of, the whole is lost. I'm also a bit worried who gave the permission to design or to start the process of designing something like that. I know it was a bit of a mixed cocktail, and I think you're like, of course, it's your architectural ego at the back. Like, on the other side, I don't think that there's enough control. I don't think, in my humble opinion, I don't think that's the answer to Tirana's problem. The lady said another tower. I think maybe going to the things that, for example, Germans are applying, as you put, I think they're much more functional at this point in Albania. I think that's kind of like the context, the urban context is non-existent. I think that's kind of like where it should start. I don't like when I saw the image, the huge tower. I think I live in Hamburg, which again they are kind of they're having problems building the tower that Chermayeff designed. The investors left, and they're still wondering. That was kind of like it's a huge discussion building a 120-meter tower, and now it's just kind of like you're presenting a 140-meter tower as it's nothing. Like someone took a decision, someone called you on the phone, and they said, "Okay, yeah, I'm going to do it. I've never done it. You've never done it. Let's do it together." And yeah, maybe there's not. I don't know if there's a. I'm really kind of like I don't know. I'm questioning the whole situation. That's kind of like. I said it's fun in the beginning. I really like the building. I live in Germany.
Thanks.
Cool visit. But the jumps that they were made, I think it's kind of like huge leaps without. I said, there is no from the modeling, from the drawings. There was nothing to do with the context. Who's going to play there? Who's going to live there? The kids. Where are they going? I like very fundamental questions. And yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like. Yeah. There's no, like I said, I'm questioning the whole situation. It's very, I would like to have an answer because both more or less ask the same, but there's no, yeah, I don't know, I fucking care.
I didn't say I didn't care.
Yeah, okay,
That's really, but that's important. I really didn't say I didn't care. I do care.
Okay, but you still do, that's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. And that's kind of like, of course, as an architect, someone should do the research, should do where I'm going to design, what's the urban context, why I'm going to design there, and who's going to be the user. That's kind of like, yeah.
Of course I have some ideas about it, but I don't know them. I mean, I just mean, like, I don't know. So I can't, but just to say, like, I completely respect that frustration. It's not, I'm not even arguing that, like, it's reasonable, like this. Like, I'm not arguing that. Like, I'm not saying that it's unreasonable, but, you know, this, to be fair though, this one, was also unreasonable at a moment. I mean, now it's not, right? Now it's not. Like, it was a moment when I really didn't know anything, and I invented that. And that was invented, and this is also invented. So, and you're right, and I will, like, correct that, like, because of course I think about the urban context all the time, and I have like 1,000 drawings of it and so forth that matter to me deeply, and I could talk about the site plan and so forth. And I've been talking about it, like, from this very far away place, because I'm also, working endlessly on, like, exactly the front door and so forth, and how that works. And we have to have discussions for months ahead to figure that out. And all I can say is I'm really happy that I'm here now trying to do this. I'm trying to talk to you about it. I'm learning about it. And you know what? It's fair. It's absolutely fair to, like, be like, what the fuck does this? And again, I don't know. Like, I do not know. And I don't want to be a relativist. The other answer is, like, if I don't build that tower, which is cool, some bad architect will build that tower. That's like a shitty answer that I don't even think. Like I don't even have that thought. Like I'm it's because, and like what does it mean that I'm a good architect is also like utterly debatable, right? But I do approach it, just to clarify, like with sincerity. Like it's back to like the funny, like the humor about it. Like my humor is sincere. Like I want people to live that way. I mean, I suggest that it's possible to live that way, at least.
Sure, but you said also you spent 11 years doing design Leksion. You knew the German context. You know how complicated it is, which I think is fair enough. That it should be that complicated. And yeah, then the jump here. It's something complicated. Of course, I think.
I'll give you that. I spent more time, certainly per square meter.
Yeah. But you also live there because you did something for you. And in this case, in all the towers, you said I'm not so sure if I will live there.
I didn't. No, that's a misunderstanding. I would like to live there. I would like to live in both of them. And I even know which apartments I would like, which are not the top. No, that's not true. Sorry, you misheard me about that last week. I really would like to live there. But, yeah, no, sorry.
I will first do my questions and maybe join this conversation after. First of all, I saw that this tent tower, the yellow one, is in steel. Correct me if I'm wrong. No?
You're wrong. No,
It's concrete floor?
Yeah, it's concrete. It's concrete.
It's all concrete. Because I would have been very happy if you brought this steel.
I think that
material.
steel's really expensive here, but you have to have a good reason. I mean, the cool thing about that round tower in concrete is like it's phenomenally efficient as a form, as a concrete thing. You know, you like in a way the column pitch and the core is decided by like the width of the parking below. I mean, it's a kind of set of logics. Yeah.
That's why I asked, because I thought it was in steel and it would be the first one here, and maybe it would like explode a new trend of material in Tirana. But yeah.
I kind of wish that the other one had some steel parts, but
the taller one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or I mean, certainly there's going to be that said, there's going to be a fair bit of steel in that cadastre office. Like the whole roof of that cadastre office wants to be steel naturally. Right, like in the where you have thin stuff in the model, wants to be steel.
It's a material that is very present in Europe now. So
Meanwhile, trying to build a 10-story house in Berlin out of steel is like unthinkable.
It is what?
Unthinkable.
Yeah. About the taller build, about the tall tower. I would wish, because I saw that you are very playful in design, and in design it's very approachable, like you directly see the playfulness. And in architecture you get a bit more, I wouldn't say confused, but you have your own rules in your head, and kind of you understand them in plan, but in rendering it's more difficult to understand them. But for example, this one, in plan it's very clear the rules that you use, but in rendering it's a bit more complex. And in the tower, I was thinking like, how can you break the essence of tower? And if you think like that, no? And for me, it would be in this case breaking the hierarchy. So why are the lofts in the lower floors, and why are the normal apartments in the upper floors? So that would be a suggestion.
Fair enough.
Just to make it more playful. About the topic that it was opened here, I think we attacked you a bit too much because you have this is a political thing. It's not for here, I guess.
But wait, I just want to say back to that thing. Like, I don't want to also say like it's not my responsibility. Like I also don't want to say that. Like I also don't want to say that I don't care and it's not my responsibility. Like I do it, I'm into it, I think it's good, I think that there's economic sense, I think it has, I can see a ton of problems with it, but net, it's not, I don't do it for the money. I don't do it, you know, I mean, sure, I do it a little for my own ego. There's no way to make architecture without that. I don't think. I don't think it's possible. That's clear, so that has to be like a good chunk. But I'm not trying to get out of, I'm not trying to get out of it. I'm not trying to get out of like what I think my responsibility is. Like, if I thought I was ruining the place, I wouldn't do it.
No.
Right? But it's more like the general, like, you know, I think it's a little bit, I would like the mystery of how, like, how people are going to move into there to be resolved. And I ask constantly, and I get into it. And I also have this discussion with my own students all the time, because I also make them draw giant buildings in Tirana, and they're like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, so I invite this, and I knew that this would happen here in this audience. Like, it's not, and I didn't really know what I would say. I thought I would start with, like, I'll be straightforward about, like, what I'm doing, about what I don't know. I call it uncertainty, and I don't want to, but it's a lot to be responsible for, just to say. Like, besides what you brought up, like, I'm also somehow, which is crazy, somehow, like, I'm the one who's like, does this work in the fire regulations, which don't exist, right? You know, like, which is like in Berlin, in that building, I pay fortunes, or somebody pays fortunes for like a fire guy to come and tell me that I have to make something thicker and bigger, and I'm always like, how do we cheat that? So, like, I've changed roles like 100% between, like, Europe and here, in terms of, like, I think, like, oh God. And even I, like, also, like, my contracts, like, writing them, like, nobody seems to care, you know, it's like, and I'm kind of fighting for, like, sustainability, things like using concrete, like, reasonably efficiently, like, that's suddenly, like, my task. And so, I'm not complaining at all. It's a very cool deal to have made what I made and to now be making what I just showed you. That is, like, the shit. In terms of, like, life, but it's also like forcing so much, like, just kind of quality control in my own head. That's pretty real. I mean, just like, I don't want you to think that I'm here to screw the place over.
Well, now it's very clear why the other presenters chose not to.
Yeah,
present
sure.
their work in Albania, because it feels like you are there on that stage representing the government, and they want to fight with the government. We're making
No, but
these rules.
I mean, in a way, I represent all the other people who didn't show it, you know, who are sissies. They should have shown it.
Well, it might be maybe very helpful if you had a slide with a ground floor.
Sure.
Because, yeah, I know from, let's say, the interior struggles that we have, that one of the things that we are trying to push a lot with the developers is to free up the ground floor as much as possible in order to make place for all the public, let's say, functions that should happen in the public, in the ground floor. And saying that, what I like about your approach is that you are also a designer. We know many architects that are doing architecture, that have been doing architecture, and on the side may have designed also some objects. But it seems like you are a designer and an architect in parallel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that design approach is somehow feeding or reflected also in your architecture, like big scale approach. And what you're trying to do with your kitchen, with the house, with the bed itself.
Yeah.
It's also seems to be the same thing that you're doing in this public urban scale. And for me, the bed, the triangle bed, is somehow very much related to the ground floor approach. Like, you're saving space, say, from the bed to give it to the openness of the room.
Of course. Yeah.
Just to save you a little bit.
Thank you. No, of course I care about the ground a lot. I've also been talking about it in 2 lectures without, not to people who know the place, so it doesn't make sense to like get into it, you know. Also, we're working on it. Thanks. I'll take it. How does teaching change my practice? I think. Sorry. Nice. Weird. I just started in Vienna at Engewande, so it's been 1 semester. And I used to teach at the AA, a diploma unit, for a long time. I mean, Tirana changes my practice way more than teaching. And I don't just mean because of the projects. I mean because of it's quite intense, and so you have to think about, again, all these things that I'm responsible for, which are not even the things that you just take issue with. It's like, all right, and then so what's happening is like trying to convey that to students, to be like, I tried to just to reflect Tirana back, to be like, okay, now you're responsible for this. Like, what is that community? What's the human scale? I mean, a really simple thing, which I got all my students to say, and I should have just said myself, is like I'm trying to figure out a human scale, right? I'm trying to figure out, with all those lines and all the mini splits and all the little balconies and all the changes, just at a very basic level, the mandate is actually 150 meters. How do you have anything that relates to a body, right? And so I find myself trying to convince my students of that, and it's making me reflect on my larger goals, on these questions. Because in the office, you start drawing and drawing and drawing, and you get caught up in how big is the elevator. I mean, it happens, of course, in every office. So the students ask questions like you do on the same basis, actually, and that's really helpful.
May I mean, a last very short question, because we're a school of architecture in here, so I mean, this is all dedicated to our students, and I'd really love, I mean, I asked for perspectives from your side, so not meaning to explain us our own reality, which are worried about, of course, and we are uncertain of the processes that are happening. But do you have any advice for that? I mean, as much as you know the context.
Related to that, two things. One is your reality is my reality now. I'm here. I'm here. I'm showing you what I'm doing. I'm coming back next month. I'm coming back the month after. I'm here. I'm going to own one of those apartments. I'm part of this too. And that relates to my other piece of advice is don't design for just if you, whatever it is, imagine somebody is as free and as happy and as fun loving as yourself, right? So like whatever I do, it's not like it all has to be for me, certainly not. But I imagine that the people who live in those towers, the people who use my stove, have have the same feeling that I have. Of course they will do something else, right? Of course they won't be me, right? But I don't ever imagine that the other people are more conservative than me. I never imagine that. I imagine that they also want it flexible and open and free in every context. And that's really helpful because when you're studying or starting out, you think like the world isn't ready for whatever it is that you think. And it's like, ask. And, you know, so like just assume that they are and then it works. That's my advice. Thanks. I was right to end my lecture. I'm nervous.